Greetings, I'm Sheila Pires, the Communication Officer of the Southern African Catholic Bishops' Conference, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. Over the past 2 days, that is June 23rd to June 24, various delegates, religious sisters, faith-based representatives, as well as civil society organizations were here at the University of Cape Town to look at matters concerning the G20 Summit under the title International Symposium for Global Justice and Africa's G20 Priorities. Different delegates discussed serious issues regarding the future of the continent of Africa, regarding issues such as debt cancellation, issues such as social justice, issues concerning climate justice, issues concerning poverty, concerning food programs for school-going children. Various issues were tackled, as well as youth unemployment and the contribution, or rather the collaboration between faith-based organizations and civil society, as well as our local governments. And so in these two-part interviews, I'll be bringing you conversations with the chairperson of the SACBC Department for Social Action, as well as the sisters from Calvary in Botswana and a sister from Montebello, Dominican sister from Montebello in KZN. So we'll be looking at various aspects concerning this symposium and their hopes for the G20 Summit. Thank you so much for watching. Greetings and thank you so much for joining us. We're coming to you all the way from Cape Town, where we have just ended the 2-day symposium on solidarity for humanity, one future. And as a matter of fact, the subtitle of this symposium is simply the International Symposium, Global Justice and Africa's G20 Priorities. It's been a very interesting, or rather very powerful and educational 2-day symposium. Bishop Thulani Mbuyisa, of course, being the chairperson of the Social Action Department of the SACBC. You joined us throughout these sessions, and you are also the liaison bishop for Justice in Peace. So thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
A lot was said. We spoke a lot about debt reduction or debt cancellation, which was a call made also by Pope Francis with regards to countries in the global south, poor countries. We spoke about hunger, food programs for children, school-going children. What was your takeaway from this symposium?
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, a big thank you to the organizers and those who helped to put this together. Really, it was a global event taking place here in Cape Town. So as you mentioned, one of the main issues discussion was about debt. The debt that is owed by countries from the global south, who are also the most impoverished countries. And so from this symposium, a call was issued, first of all, to name this not as as a handout on the part of the creditors and the richer countries, but as a matter of justice, meaning that the more the countries from the global south try to service these debts, the more impoverished their communities or countries become. Because then governments are forced now to choose. Do we take a huge chunk of our budget to service this debt, to repay these loans, or do we use that for healthcare, for education, and for infrastructure, and so forth? And so the call here has been very clear that we're not calling for just a reform of this structure, but actually cancellation of this debt. And the other central topic or theme also of this symposium was about feeding, school-going children, because this as a way of reducing poverty. Because as we know that those young minds, those young people, when they go to school on an empty stomach, there is no way that they will be able to learn and to develop accordingly. So, therefore, if we're able to offer them at least one meal, a day, so then we are assisting, let's say, in keeping them in school, especially for young girls, because then we know what happens when they drop out of school. It may result in early marriages and other situations. We also know that sometimes when they drop out, they might end up in child labor, or even perhaps doing drugs on the streets. And so if therefore, let's say, we provide these meals that are needed, we are also assisting in keeping them in school, and thus ensuring a brighter future for them.
Indeed. But of course, the usual that happens in many of such events, be it in the church or outside the church, is that documents are produced, are submitted, and then they are archived. Now, I believe there was an urgent call for action, especially as you read the document, the final document coming out of the symposium, the declaration, and one of those actions or implementations that should be happening now within the year of 2025 is the task of religious sisters. Or rather the empowerment of religious sisters, because so much was said about the contribution of religious sisters when it comes to education. As a matter of fact, we had some here that are quite involved with food programs for children, school-going children, and also how the church can play a better role, a greater role in eradicating hunger by making use of, for example, the spaces that you have, that the church may have that are not being used presently, making use of such spaces for community vegetable gardens and so forth. But let's talk more about the way forward. How do we ensure, or how do you as a church, as one of the collaborators of this symposium, ensure that this again is not archived, but action is taken?
Yes, I mean, it is true. There are so many symposiums or many forums such as this that end up just being talk shows, and perhaps nothing concrete comes out of this, or perhaps that even the decisions are not actionable. You don't see the results, you don't see any form of implementation. Now, we are aware of this as we were discussing and even making these calls or these declarations, that there must be timelines. So we know who will do what, when, and how. So one of the things clearly that needs to be done is to make sure that these declarations find their way onto the agenda for the G20 Summit at the end of this year here in South Africa. But also, as you mentioned, the role that faith communities, specifically the Catholic Church, and in particular religious women, that they have a greater role to play. Because as we know that the Church provides healthcare, education, and so forth. And so one of the things that was mentioned is that we can actually make use of the space that the Church has currently. We're speaking about the land that we have, to make sure that, yes, we create those gardens, invite the communities around our parishes, our dioceses, and so forth, to make use of this, in order, let's say, to feed themselves, but also to create job opportunities. And that also we make use of, let's say, the religious women, the sisters who are already there in the education space. Let them perhaps be empowered, be given this project of feeding, school-going children, instead of making use of the system that is failing us, the tender system that we have currently. So this is, I think, one of the bold and radical propositions or proposals from this symposium.
And of course, speaking of bold and radical suggestions coming out of this symposium, it was interesting to hear someone say, which of course I think many of us have heard this over the past days and weeks, that all these cancellations from funds coming from the US in particular is somehow a wake-up call to African leaders to get their house in order, and also as small as it may sound, but starting community gardens and so forth is one way of taking ownership of our struggles and turning it into something good for society. So, final remarks with regards to this symposium and what the world is experiencing presently in terms of hunger, in terms of debts, in terms of the economic crisis, unemployment, youth unemployment, in terms of climate change, climate justice. You're also calling for climate justice.
Well, one of the things that we learned from this symposium is that all these things are interrelated. And of course, it requires that's why we're calling for solidarity. That is, there's no particular continent or country that can solve all these problems on its own. So we need to come together. So it's a call to unity. But it's also a call to recognize that it is also within our powers to make these changes. Now, at the global stage, certainly there needs to be reforms in some of these global institutions when it comes to debt, when it comes to loans and so forth, the financial institutions. There's also a need of a change of mindset when it comes to our own leaders, but also we ourselves as citizens, knowing that I can do something about the problems of that we're facing in the world. So it's not just up to our elected leaders or to so and so or to this or the other person or institution, but I can make a change. Begin with small things, even just growing my own vegetables instead of running to the supermarket, and also looking at the fact that prices continue to rise every time. So there's a lot that we can do that is actually within our own means to try and feed ourselves, and not only to wait for government grants and so forth. If we have access to land, to water, just make use of all those. We were reminded by one of the professors just how rich Africa is. So if we were to make certain changes, policy changes, we can overcome lots of these challenges. And so yes, the tariffs and the withdrawal of aid funds has crippled so many aid agencies, but also the communities that they were reaching out to. But it is also a call to stand on our own feet, to recognize that we can actually sustain some of those programs ourselves, making use of our own brains and our own hands and so forth. So also a challenge to each and every one of us as individuals, as communities, even as faith communities.
Bishop Thulani, thank you so much for talking to us, but I cannot end this conversation without saying congratulations. We've just heard the news today that Bishop Thulani was appointed as a member of the Dicastery for Consecrated and Religious Life. Congratulations to this. How do you feel about this announcement?
I'm yet to process it, but thank you so much. Thank you so much. But of course, it's all about service. It's all about service, to be the service of the Universal Church, and in particular of consecrated women and men. And so I hope I can make my own contribution in this field. So thank you. Thank you.
Certainly, certainly. You're most welcome. It means a lot also, not only to the church, but also to the church in Africa. And you were once there as a senior delegate, but now I just heard coming out of the symposium, people were asking you, what does it mean? Does it mean that you now move to Rome and so forth? So perhaps just to clarify things, perhaps explain to people what this appointment means.
First of all, to the people of Kokstad, I'm not going anywhere. No, to be a consultant, I'm yet to understand fully exactly what it entails, but I do know that to be a consultant, it means you're one of those who are called into meetings about particular perhaps policies or directions that perhaps the Dicastery is taking. Of course, following the leadership of the prefect, the moment is Sister Simona. So it does not require any movement outside of Utah. So only for meetings and then coming back. So I'm not going anywhere. But yes, I will as be of service, of course, to the church. And I'm also delighted to note that the number of us as members now of this consultative body will come from Africa.
Yes.
And majority of them were also at the synod, so some I do know them personally, you know, that I was with.
Including the prefect herself.
Yes, yes, that's true, that's true.
All right.
Yes,
No, thank you and congratulations once again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So that is it. This has been a conversation with Bishop Thulani Mbuyisa, CMM, the Bishop of Kokstad, and of course the chairperson of the SACBC Social Action Department, talking to us about the just concluded symposium organized by the Southern African Catholic Bishops' Conference Commission for Justice and Peace Commission, as well as JENA and many other partners that came together in Cape Town University to look at issues affecting Africa, especially under the umbrella of the G20. As you know, South Africa will be holding the G20 Summit in just a couple of months, and so it's important that faith-based organizations also add their voices. And thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.